Being an animal foster parent, music and movement, and mindful meditation with Sue Heineman. Stay inspired. Could you share with us about the work that you do as an animal foster parent?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so first, thanks for inviting me to this. I think what happened, trying to how I first got involved with fostering, it probably has to do with my brother, who I kind of wanted a dog. We already had a couple of cats. My partner Bill and I had a couple of cats, and I was sort of interested in dogs, but Bill was like, I don't know if I want a dog. It seems like a commitment, and you know, we have we travel a lot. I mean, the symphony, would travel sometimes, but also Bill and I would go on these adventures, for like 3 to 4 weeks at a time, a couple times a year. So my brother said, "Well, why don't you try fostering?" So that seemed like a good idea. It's like the pet library. You can just you get to, and that seemed like a good idea to see if we liked having a dog around. So we did that. We had a few dogs, and eventually we did foster fail. That's what they call it when you end up adopting your foster. The foster failure is right here. It's Bella.
Hello, Bella.
Bella is crashed out, but Bella is. We saw a little heart there. I mean, and, even with her, we weren't really planning on adopting. I mean, we were definitely not planning on adopting her. We knew she was a cool dog, but when we first were fostering her, she already had an application for adoption, and then that fell through. And then they're like, "Here's your chance. Do you want to apply?" And we're like, "Nah, we just want to keep fostering." And we see something, and then that happened a couple more times, and then actually somebody adopted her, and she moved into their house. And then after a week, suddenly like the in-laws were like, "What? You adopted a pit bull?" And I mean, she's the gentlest thing in the world. Like she was literally sleeping in the bed with one of the kids, and I mean, she's just the sweetest thing. But then I don't know. So she's like, I'm gonna have to give the dog back, and we're like, she's welcome back here. And then at that point, we're like, okay, let's just third time. I think this is maybe let's just I don't want to go through this again.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept her, and then we started fostering. I mean, one of the concerns with adopting her was actually that we wouldn't be able to foster anymore because I liked that. I thought that seemed like a good thing to do. The way this organization, a lot of organization in urban areas like this work, is that like we have a Humane Rescue Alliance here, a Humane Society kind of a thing that has a big facility and they have a big network. So, they're able to handle lots of dogs. And if they go over capacity, they have partner kind of things. Mm-hmm. But in rural areas, there's often just very limited space, very limited funding, and there's a lot of animals end up getting euthanized. So what their rescues, like the one that we volunteer with, is that they'll pull as many animals as they can from these rural shelters and bring them into foster homes in the DC area. And so that just makes it, it just gives the animals a huge leg up, 4 legs up, haha, because now they've lived in, oh, look, I got a chuckle. It makes a huge difference how a dog, if they're stressed out in the shelter, especially if a dog, if they're stressed out in the shelter, you can go and meet them, but you're not seeing them at their best. And if they've been living in somebody's home, and especially somebody who fosters one after another, usually ends up being people who have, you just learn from every animal that's here. You learn something, and so it's you get to help socialize them, and then the person adopting them just has a lot more information about them. Are they good with cats? Are they good with kids? Or what are they like on walks? And just all that kind of stuff. So we did continue to do dogs for a while, and then we sort of morphed into cats. And now we pretty much only do cats. And right now, I was telling you before we started recording, we have 7 foster cats in the house, one of whom is pregnant. So we're probably going to be into the double digits pretty soon. But we have a 3-story house here, and there's not that many people living here at the moment, so we have lots of different rooms that we can just turn into like little cat sanctuaries, and it's been a really nice hobby during this pandemic. I've been able to increase the capacity and just the amount of time that I have to spend with these animals because I'm not working. So that's that. Yeah, I don't even know the count. I mean, it's well over 100 cats that we've had, and maybe a couple of dozen dogs. I think we've had Bella about 5 or 6 years, something like that. And we had, like I said, we'd had a couple of fosters before. We'd had maybe 3 or 4 fosters before her. And yeah, and then the other thing, I mean, I didn't know anything about dogs. My brother had a pit bull, and he had, occasionally found some. Like, he lived in Brooklyn at the time, and he'd say, "I just found this pit bull tied up in Brooklyn Park. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Okay, no," because at the time, I mean, we didn't, and he worked with a rescue out there, but it just kind of piqued my interest a little bit, and then, yeah, I mean, I just had the same, preconceived ideas about pit bulls that everybody has, which is, really based on not, yeah, it's a whole cultural, societal kind of thing that has made these animals into the villain. 70 years ago, they weren't like that. People didn't think that about them. Or even 20 years ago, it was like Rottweilers and Dobermans and German Shepherds were the scary ones. Now it's pit bulls, and there's a lot of reasons in it. But it was just before we even committed to fostering one, we just kind of started asking around and learning about them from other people. And I looked on like Rover.com, that's like sort of a pet sitting doggy Airbnb kind of a thing back when people traveled. Like, so if you would travel, you'd pay somebody to hold on to your dog for a few days and take care of it. And I wrote to about a dozen of them, and I said, just in the DC area, it's like, first of all, are you ever around in August or December? Because that's when everybody in DC travels, like probably more than even other places, because DC is so full of people who are, temporary here, or like young people whose families are elsewhere. So the city really clears out again, it's so weird talking about a time that doesn't exist right now. Maybe it'll exist again, but at the time, August and December is when the city would just empty out. So it's like, okay, first of all, are you guys around in August and December? And second of all, do you have any issue with pit bulls? And like, out of the 12 people I wrote to, like, only 2 were like, well, I love pit bulls, but I can't have them in my building. And then all the other 10 were like, no problem. So I was like, okay, so, obviously this is the area that I'm living with is already much more progressive in this than even I was. And yeah, so that was a couple, we had these barriers, like thinking like we wouldn't be able to travel anymore. And when we realized it's actually not that hard at all to find somebody to take care of your animal when you travel.
How do you find homes for them?
I'm not personally responsible for finding homes for them. I do, I maintain their social media profiles. And it's like I'll share onto my Instagram, and then they get reshared, and I have to write up a little blurb, like a little Tinder profile, describing their personalities. But if people who are shopping to adopt a rescue animal, there are websites where you can go to either the individual rescue sites, or like Pet Finder is one that is, I think it's national, but you can like search in your area, and it's a sort of a clearinghouse for all the foster animals that are from different rescues. Because I mean, it's a big enough city that there's half a dozen different rescues that do pretty much the same kind of thing, pulling from rural shelters. And so people, and it's a whole different volunteer. They're usually all volunteer. So it's a whole different volunteer team who screens the applications. So I don't have to decide, and somebody else screens them, and then I just 10 minutes before we started talking, I got an email saying that there's an application for Zelda and Hilda, who are 2 of my very shy fosters, which is really nice because it's nice to see them, get an application together. People ask this a lot. It is that people also, it's like, isn't it so hard to say goodbye to them? And I mean, it is for like 5 minutes, but then there's so much need that it's like, then they're like, okay, we'll fill you up again. And it is so fascinating to get to know all these different kind of animals, because even with the cats, they just have different personalities. So you feel like you're learning something from each animal.
This question is from Richard Meek, and he has asked, how does your passion for running balance with all the time it takes to maintain music performance skills? Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't think it takes that much more time than going to the gym, or if people play tennis or whatever. I mean, even right now, like, I'm running maybe 1 or 2 hours a day. I mean, that seems like a long time for running, but if people are like, getting into their cars, driving to the gym, changing, doing a class, shower, whatever, drive back. I think it's probably similarly time consuming. Also, like when we were working, I commute by bike or by foot, so often I would like run. If I run to work and run back, that's already between 4 and 5 miles right there. And or on Thursdays when we morning and evening, I can get 9 miles in because I can run to and from rehearsal and in the evening. So yeah, it's the time thing isn't. I mean, one thing that is inconvenient for me since I'm doing with the running, especially like if I want to do any sort of events, like a race, like a kind of a ultra marathon kind of a thing, they do obviously tend to happen on the weekends, and I inconveniently would have concerts on Friday and Saturday nights. Or even like if I wanted to like, I've done a couple of sort of organized cycle tours. They tend to assume that people can travel on Saturday, and then people meets on Sunday, and then they go off. But of course, I never can travel on Saturday. It always has to be Sunday if I have a Saturday night concert. So that kind of thing has affected me. But I mean, the thing about running is you can do it any time of day or night. And I mean, and I do it at night. Sometimes sometimes I go out at 9 or 10 at night, and on my birthday, I decided to run my age, so I started literally at midnight. I just went out, and if your passion for movement is your mode of transportation, it becomes really easy to find the time for it, because it's like if I wanted to drive to the Kennedy Center, I have to leave earlier than I would if I'm going to run there, because I have to consider, walking to my car, which I don't have, but like when my parents are here, they want to go to a concert. They're like, you have to leave like an hour early to go out and get into the car, and then you have to go to the garage, and you have to walk up and stuff like that. And it's much faster to run or to bike.
Richard shared a really nice comment, just most impressed with your ability to get away frequently to travel for special hikes or runs.
Yeah, I mean, that's something about the job that I have. We always have a few weeks in December, and we always had August off. So at that point, it's just like I could plan. It's like, okay, this is the year we're going to Ethiopia, whatever, and take that chunk of time. I got pretty good at taking a few weeks off of playing, and coming back and getting right back into it. I've never. I mean, this pandemic. That's the harder thing about like the idea of like going back to work. But I think it will also be kind of gradual. I mean, we're all kind of in the same boat, aren't we? I haven't played for a while.
We're just gonna go into your mindful meditation practice and how you utilize these habits and methods in your daily life and work.
Had been a little bit introduced to this when I lived in New Zealand. I had a therapist there who was also a meditation teacher, she and her husband, and just by our conversation, she's like, it sounds like this might be more beneficial to you than more talk therapy. I mean, I lived in New York. I'd had like the traditional sort of therapy where you sit down or you lie down, and they sit there and go, don't speak. Like, I had so much of that, but so I got into it at the time, and then just it sort of waned a little bit, and then it was just honestly during this pandemic that a friend of mine, actually in the Baltimore Symphony, was offering a mindfulness course online, like this with the little squares. And so Bill and I sat on this very same couch with the dog, and we took this class together. And it was just the timing of it. I think with the pandemic and our being around and everything that's going on in the world, it just really just kind of clicked in. It's like it's a good way to kind of get to being in the. I mean, we all know the cliches: being in the present moment, observing your thoughts and that kind of thing. But it really, I do think that there's, for any of us who are performers, there'll be some people can identify with. We've all dealt with something along these lines, whether or not whatever language we've used. But like, how do you cope with being on stage, and how do you deal with whatever anxiety or thoughts about I should have practiced harder, or I'm going to mess this up, or they're going to hate me, or I'm going to get fired, whatever. So, I feel like mindfulness meditation is just a sort of like based on centuries old sort of techniques for like how to just learn to without pushing against those thoughts, just like let them loosen their hold on you, that kind of thing. Because I know you probably talk with a lot of people in these discussions about like stage fright or performance anxiety kinds of things, and yeah, and for me the ways, I mean, even before I even kind of knew about having words for it, I think like even as a young player, I had definitely had experienced the feeling of um, playing and realizing, okay, I'm just me right here and thinking about this and not worrying about that, and I'm aware of how my toe hurts or whatever. Like it's not like you did zombie trance or something like that. Oh, there's Delmar. Just a little Delmar name pop up. Um, but yeah, I mean, and all we do is we listen to a podcast done by this fantastic meditation teacher called Tara Brock, who actually is local. She, I had heard of her years ago. I'd gone to some of her, they call them satsangs, like where a bunch of people sit around and she does a talk, and then there's some meditations together. It's very much not based on any kind of like exterior spiritual supernatural being or anything like that. Like that wouldn't kind of jack with me. I wouldn't be able to, but yeah, I have found it just really cool to kind of think about, when I'm running or when I'm playing the bassoon, or just even like being with the animals. Just like you start to notice, like you know, you start noticing more things. Kind of the whole point of it, noticing things, and including when you feel terrible, and having a comfortable sort of curiosity, like, oh, that feels bad. Where does that feel bad? What's that about it? But it's not like, oh, let me figure it out and solve the problem. It's just like, yeah, it feels kind of bad. Yep. And I mean, living in, I mean, there's just so much going on, like in the country right now, between the politics and the pandemic and everything, our careers and stuff. I mean, it'd be very easy to just get into this whole ball of worry about how things are going to pan out, and that's really not productive. I'd rather just like have a good time running and hanging out with my dogs and playing my bassoon, and doing things that way make me more likely to succeed and be able to cope when when the world does come back. It's like with an audition, you can't put too much on like, am I going to win this, and how's it going to go, and what's going to happen. I mean, it's so freeing to really cultivate this feeling like whatever happens, this is going to be okay. I mean, nobody starts a race knowing how it's going to end for them, and nobody starts a 200 miler 100% confident that they're going to finish it. There's all kinds of things that can happen. But so yeah, there really is a lot of parallels with the short-term motion, like in terms of like, how do I get from one beach to the next? How do I get from this bar to the next? Or here's another parallel that I actually found very fascinating. Like, I hope you guys will find this interesting. So Bill and I will go out in the evening with the dog. We're listening to Tara Brock. We're talking about whatever kind of mindfulness woo-woo of the night, and the dog, if we all three walk together, the dog wants to stop and sniff here, and you're walking, and maybe not paying attention to her because we're listening, and then the leash does this because she stopped, but so what we found works so much better is, so Bill walks on his own. I have the dog with me, and so he'll just walk at a pretty good clip, and if she wants to stop and sniff, he just keeps walking. And we're listening to the same podcast. Like, these headphones are amazing. These AirPods. I mean, we can be like half a block away from each other, and we each have one pod. And he's got the phone. I can still hear it. It's incredible. So, I mean, God, who knows what that's doing to our brains? But so the dog will stop and to sniff, and then she'll kind of look around, and then she'll look up for where Bill is, and then she'll start to run. And so what I try to do, and this does relate to music, is I try to always keep the leash just a little bit loose. I mean, we're on a short leash. We don't use those horrible retractable leashes. Do not use those. Anybody, don't use those. You want to have the leash. If you're living in an urban area, you want to just keep that dog near you. So what I try to do is then I will run with her, and so then but then she might slow down because something is interesting, and so I'll slow down with her. And it is very much, it feels like chamber music to me. It feels like, I would say it feels like dancing, but like I'm a non-dancer. But I have to watch her movement and anticipate it, and I have to just kind of shadow her. And it's very much like following somebody else's rubato, and we try to stay in sync. And it's a very cool challenge to try to just keep that leash loose, so that anyway, I mean, that might just sound kind of creepy, but like if you're a runner, being able to all change your gears and go fast, go slow, and do this all in a sense of like balance. Um, it feels like an amazing physical workout. I'm bonding with my dog. I'm following her. I'm very aware of the rhythm. And then occasionally it's the fun, hilarious delight. I mean, and it's very mindful because I'm completely focused on her. Like, I'm not paying attention to Bill at all. So she's looking at him. I don't think she's even aware of me, right? Because she's so focused. I think she just, at this point, she's like, sometimes he's gone around the corner and she's like, oh, and it's so you're like watching the little brain kind of figure out. And sometimes she goes the wrong way, and I'll just follow her. I don't correct her. The only time I'll correct her is like if we come to an intersection and she's about to walk in front of a car or something like that, or if there's another dog. At that point, it's like she's driving, like it's like a driving school, and she's the student. So like I do have the power to correct her if I need to, but mostly I just kind of follow her, and it really is. I have to. I hope that's satisfying. That's filling whatever part of my brain that isn't playing with other humans at the time.
One of the books that you mentioned in your interview, the Born to Run, about light, easy, smooth, fast running.
Yeah.
Would you want to share a little bit more about your, just reflection on that and any realizations and then how that relates to music too?
Yeah, it's funny when I'll backtrack a little bit because when I was on a bike trip with Bill in Utah, and it was a sort of backcountry kind of a thing. I mean, it wasn't on pavement, is what I'm trying to say. So that it was on slick rock, and then there were some sandy bits and stuff. And I would realize that when you get to the sandy stuff, I would often just wipe out. And then I started thinking about the rhythm of my pedaling in terms of the way we count beats. And I had not that long before read David McGill's book, Sound and Motion, and where he talks a lot about the tabby toe numbering of getting how transporting yourself from one beat to the next. And instead of going 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, you go 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So like all the interior, like the 16th notes in that example, are leading all this forward to the next beat. Which when I really started thinking about that, I mean, that just clicked so immediately, and it became like one of my major, not only teaching tools, but like things within my playing. And I noticed that really worked well with cycling too. So if I'm, you get into a rhythm, and if I thought 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, it would always commit me to a few more revolutions. I mean, the time that you fall, just like the time you fall off a phrase in the bassoon or oboe, whatever, is when you stop moving. When you stop, there's like I remember Steve Maxim saying something like this about how like just keep spinning the sound. The moment you stop, you're dead. Whatever you just there has to be some sort of motion all the time. Leaning in with your support, and using these numbers to count, I found that was really super helpful, and it would just help me from just freezing, and just the fact that my legs were continuing to move in a certain rhythm, always committing in advance, and I didn't fall like nearly as much. So what this guy says in the Born to Run, which is about these sort of now these amazing runners in Mexico, but also there's a bunch of American ultra marathoners in there, talk about like if you're out there and you're maybe not feeling so great, or trying to figure out like how to like strategize your endurance, because that's obviously a big thing when you're out there for hours and hours. Is like the first thing you want to have is easy. I think it was easy, then light, then smooth. So so you can imagine like people are like, oh, I hate running, it feels so horrible. Probably because you're going harder, you're not doing it in a way that feels easy. you want it just if all of it. And he's like, if all that feels good is a walk, an easy walk, if that's all you got, then you do that, and then you try to lighten it up. Just try to move with a little bit more lightness, buoyancy, whatever that means. And he didn't go into any specific biomechanics of it. And I felt like that really relates to music too. Like if you're trying to work something out, don't play it at tempo. Don't necessarily try to make it, the exact. I mean, do whatever you can do in that moment on that read that feels easy and repeatable, and then from there try to lighten it up. So like before you're allowed to go faster, before you're allowed to try triple piano or quadruple forte or whatever, make it so that it now feels easier, lighter, right? So which usually probably means a little bit more support, so you can like release your embouchure a little bit more. Whatever, find some tension. If there's an anxiety that you can kind of loosen, make it light. And then the next step was smooth. And again, so you can just see how in motion, physical motion, whatever physical activity you're doing, running, cycling, whatever, driving, people get very uptight when they drive, right? They're like this, and they're getting angry at everybody around them and stuff, and like, so I think that then you just go for smooth, and I've heard a few people talk about a similar kind of thing. I was describing with the dog how I just sort of alter my tempo and rhythm to kind of match what she's doing, and it does remind me of a way that I've had practicing where I've tried to, I would change the dynamic. I would like build in rubato in order, like, so that I would be very aware of like, okay, like I can play this part smoothly, but I'm committing to getting from beginning to end of this line in some way that could make sense in some world. Like, and so in other words, not if there's a conductor saying, can you please stay with us? But like, let's say it's you on your own, and you get to just extend. This part's a little harder for me to maneuver. Like if you're driving or cycling or whatever, or you like, oh, let me slow down for this curve. Just do it smoothly. And I heard somebody else talking in one of these many online master classes that's been going on. There had a name for it, but some sort of like rubato practice where you just the parts that you're having the most difficulty with are the parts that you want to just like expand and really lean into your support, really just like caress those intervals and stuff. So yeah, it all feels so analogous to me. I think what smooth translates to me, and with when I'm practicing, is just really like all the stuffing in between the notes, the legato, the just smoothing out vibrato and things. And I mean, isn't that kind of how we want to feel? Like, it's like you don't. I mean, I'm never going to be the world's fastest runner, but the only reason that I can go for many, many hours is that it never feels hard. Like if it starts to feel like, okay, this is, I'm getting too winded, just have to ratchet it back. I remember Nadina saying something in a class that maybe she was doing it at Maryland, because she came down to the class for my studio one time, and saying something about see that crescendo, see that forte, whatever. Use that as an invitation to it's not a command, it's an invitation to create something there and that to make it your own kind of a thing. And I think any time that we're playing or moving or whatever, and if there's a feeling of like obligation, or I should be doing this in this way, or I'm going to get in trouble if I don't do it that way or whatever, it's not going to ring as true as if you're like, all right, I've been invited to play, what does forte mean? What does this crescendo mean? It's like, how can I make this a part of the expression of this? People often we've had a couple of auditions. People often ask, especially if there's a bassoon audition coming up, or when I had students, do I have to start this? Should I start this trill from the upper note or the lower note, or how should I articulate this? And I'd always be like, I really have to believe and hope that those aren't the reasons that somebody gets a job, because they started the trill from above or below, or which edition they used, or whatever. Hopefully play the right notes. But even then, if there's, we all know, there's certain editions where there's slight discrepancies, and people come in. Like I've done on so many oboe auditions, and everybody plays La Scala with different there's just there's differences. People do the turns differently. Some people, whatever, and that's not the deciding factor.
Does anything come to mind of courses or any, workshops or opportunities that you wish schools were offering students?
I mean, I went to school a long time ago. And they, I mean, we didn't have the internet, so like this whole, I think it's probably, I assume that people are getting more. I mean, honestly, we didn't have word processors. We had typewriters. Some of us had manual typewriters. Carriage return. So this whole idea of like entrepreneurship, that not anywhere on the radar. I don't recall if any of that was offered when I was at Eastman or Juilliard, but it wasn't really of particular interest to me anyway, so I didn't pursue that. I don't know. I mean, I really think that it's so much about just being more kind of like, I mean, it's very cliche, like the world as your classroom kind of thing. I mean, some of the best things that I've learned. I mean, getting into cycling or running. I mean, these are things that didn't happen to me until I was like in my mid-30s, and so now I've rolled them in, and they're like inextricably woven into my brain psychology and my music making and my relationships and everything. But it's not like, oh, I wish everybody ran ultra marathons at Eastman or Juilliard. That doesn't make any sense.
Richard has asked a great question. How
Yes.
and when did you acquire your 7000 series Heckle?
Okay, well, I'm going to just backtrack. So first I had an 11, which I got from Tony Lipton, who used to play in the Met. And I had that for a number of years. I had that through college and my first few jobs. I mean, all smallish jobs, but like I played at New Haven Symphony, and then I went to Memphis, and then I went to New Mexico. And I was taking lots and lots of auditions, and it was after my Montreal audition, the one that Clouser won. That, I mean, I was friends with Whitney. We had met, I think in New York years before, and we just always stayed in touch. I used to play for him all the time, and before auditions, and and there he was now. I was auditioning for assistant in his orchestra. So afterwards, we were talking, and he was saying, you got to give me a horn. Like it's something about the sound of that horn is just not working. And I don't know. I mean, he obviously, I don't know if you know Whitney very well. He's been through many instruments, and I don't know. So I ended up. I started thinking, okay, and I started looking around a little bit. Actually ended up, and I'm sure this was not his intent, but I did end up buying a 6 off of him, but it wasn't really working out for me. It was so different. Honestly, I hadn't had it that long, so I shouldn't say it wasn't working out. But I was not. I was still kind of getting used to it when I got a call from Bill Bookman saying, "Hey, Bruce Granger used to be the assistant in Chicago, and at the time Bill was second in Chicago, and he was helping Bruce's survive, and this is before marriage, so I guess they was just a partner at the time, helping him to sell the instruments, and he's like, "You interested in checking out this 7?" And I was like, "Sure." And then so I got that, and I didn't know anything about instruments. Honestly, I'm not a gear person. I mean, I would have happily kept playing that 11, except that Whitney told me I'm not allowed to. So okay. So and when I picked up the 7, I thought, okay, I'm not sure I love this sound as much as the 6. Like the 6 had this like really dense, like focus, just not of a sound. But that was also what I was having a problem with in the orchestra. I was not being able to get as transparent and flexible as I had been on the 11, and probably given it another couple years, I might have figured it out. But the 7 just was. I was like, oh, this is so much easier to play. All right, I'll take this one instead. And I mean, I know it's incredibly privileged that was able to do that. My dad helped me out. I sold the other one, and we just kind of shifted money around. But so that's how I ended up with that 7. I mean, it had already been tried out by a bunch of other people in different major orchestras who weren't that into it. I love it. I don't know. It's funny because now I don't know. I'm not that interested. I feel like I'm not that interested in changing, and it feels it has a really nice sort of like not quite the density of the 6, but a lot more flexibility in colors than either that 6 or the 11 it had, and it just has this like immediacy of articulation, which I really love. That horn has the easy built in, I think, in terms like it's not like a lot of work to play it. I like that. I'm lucky. Yeah, I kind of fell into it.
This is from Richard. You were one of my first interviews for the Bassoon Archive project at one of the Glickman-Popkin bassoon camps. I assume these other passions you've developed have helped one be grounded as a professional bassoonist.
Yeah, I would think so. I when I went to the bassoon camp, that was I was just getting into cycling. I don't remember anything about our interview. I wonder what I said, but I do remember. I remember that that happened shortly after that. Yeah, and I had my bike there, and I was riding up and down the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it really did. I have to say, even back then, I think that was like 2004, 2003 or 4, something like that. Just having, and it's funny. Yeah, I was not an outdoorsy child or young adult, but having this for me, like discovering like being able to be outside and in the ocean really did just transform my life. So it definitely helps me to. And like I said, even before I really kind of get into the idea of mindfulness, I think just being out on a bicycle all day long, it just has this natural sort of rhythm and a presence, and it, on the one hand, just kind of getting away from concerns about it, but you also kind of like you can work out. It's very easy. You can sing while you're riding. I mean, and it just having that kind of flow of motion, of rhythm, definitely does. It's both an escape and a tie-in with music. So it's and just like it's this whole endorphin rush, just being out there. Get outside, everybody! It's awesome out there. No?
Nice.
Yeah. Somebody does not like being outside, or maybe right now it's not so good. Go ahead, speak up.
It's 3 degrees outside in the middle of a winter storm. So
there's no such thing as bad weather, just the wrong clothes.
Yeah, Martin's been sharing about all of his physical training in the Army, so he's doing that every day, and keeping
My
up.
My sister lives in. Where do you live, Martin?
I live at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Yeah, so my sister's in Iowa, which I don't know how. I guess you don't have the same weather systems, but I know it's about 0 degrees there, like every single day. And
yeah, it's been very cold for about the last week and a half here.
Yeah, and she's like, used to be like if she goes for her keys, the dog is like, yay! And now, like, she goes to get her snow pants, and the dog, like, goes and hides because the dog really does not want to go out in this kind of weather. It's funny because, like, all those years, there were several years when I was biking before I started running, and so I feel like it's a lot easier to run in the cold than to bike. Like with biking, anything under 40 degrees, and it was hard for me to keep my feet warm. But with running, you generate more heat, and your feet don't get cold because your foot muscles are actually working. I mean, granted, I'm not living somewhere where it's 0 degrees, so I'm not trying to, cold shame you or anything. But yeah, but I actually, honestly, I've recently gotten into this whole like cold shower thing, and it's like, that was amazing. No. I have to say, most people, when I tell them I'm taking cold showers, they're just like, oh no. All I can say it's awesome.
It happens. That was what basic training was for. After basic training, hot showers for the rest of my life.
So okay, wait. So when you were in basics, were you required to take cold showers, or is that just all that was available?
No, we were in Korean War era buildings with old plumbing. So most of the time there wasn't hot water.
Right. Okay. And was there any moments ever in all of that you kind of came out thinking that actually was pretty exhilarating?
Oh yeah, there were lots of moments in that
yeah,
you thought that kind of stuff.
But not enough that you want that in your life now.
Not overly eager to go back to it. It was good for that one experience.
I actually bought a bathtub off Craigslist, which is in my backyard, and Right now it's empty, but once the temperature gets like maybe into the 50s, we'll fill it with water, and that will be my outdoor cold plunge.
So we've gotten into our ocean swims here because the water is cold here, and so but we're in summer now.
I mean, I learned to scuba dive in New Zealand, so it was like 9mm wetsuits, and yeah, it was cold. But for me, the worst part of it was putting on a wetsuit, especially on a boat, because I'd be seasick and pulling on this thing that all smelled like maybe gross. So maybe because of that experience, just the idea of like running in the cold, I feel like much more in control of my temperature than I did like diving and plunging into the icy cold southern, like South Pacific, Tasman Sea.
The Tasman's on the between Australia and New Zealand. Did you find scuba diving like change your breathing capacity?
Nah. Scuba diving is not an aerobic activity. I mean, that's part of the point of it. And you have to just be calm, or, I mean, it can be very dangerous. So you don't want that to be an aerobic activity, or you just want to do it calmly and smoothly. I don't scuba dive anymore, I have to say. There's too much gear involved, and I get seasick. I'm much more into mountains than ocean. I'd rather be in the mountains. So not that I have mountains here, but yeah, I have found like just like the cycling and the running, just things where I can just go out and not have to like gear up. The same thing like skiing. Like I appreciate the beauty of it, but like the whole infrastructure of like the whole ski area, it just seems like a lot of work. For the amount of time that it takes to like gear up compared to the amount of time you're actually doing the activity. I don't find that pleasing. I like to just throw on my shoes, and then I could run for 20 hours. Doesn't that sound great?
Sounds awesome. Is there anything new that you've done recently or that comes to mind that you'd want to share with us?
I recently made my first pickled red onions. That's delicious. I've been, like everybody else in the world, I've been making a lot of sourdough, which is not as intimidating as I have to say. I mean, it's not about the thing that you've learned as much as just like your openness to being able to learn something. I think I'm sure I do this too, so I'm trying to be open to noticing when I do it, but I definitely notice when other people do it, which is, if I tell them, oh, I did this thing and this was cool, and often people will be like, oh, I could never do that, or that just sounds too complicated, and it's so easy to just think, that just, that I can't take that on. My life is too complicated, or I'm so busy I couldn't possibly do that. And usually I think probably it resonates for a lot of people that a lot of the things that we think we put off that we can't do. And it's not like I'm saying you have to go scuba diving or paragliding or run any amount of anything. But I mean, this happens with all kinds of stuff. Oh, sourdough seems too complicated. Oh, I can't possibly do that app on my phone. I don't know how to use that. And I'm like, none of these things are really that hard. I mean, and none of us are going to be able to do everything, right? But it's like, oh, let me check that out. So I think that's kind of what I've learned through all these past number of years of like traveling independently is like, and if you have this feeling like, oh, I can't possibly do that, take a look at that. Like, are you really you sure you can? I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to, but like, there's a lot of, sometimes just, I read this, somebody posted this thing in one of the running groups, that it's like, you don't have to be inspired or to get started. You need to start to find your inspiration, something like that. I'm not even sure if inspiration was the right word. Maybe it's motivated, because I mean, I have, even though it might sound like, oh, all these animals and all the running, I mean, I'm the huge procrastinator. There's a lot of things that I don't get around to doing that I feel like I should, and I'm at least aware that I'm doing this to myself. Like, if you just kind of start it, usually they just think that that feeling of anxiety, like I can't do this, will kind of release itself, and then you're like, then you can decide, oh, after all that, like, I don't even like this, but now at least I gave it a try. It's not like I'm afraid of that thing. I think being curious and receptive is a good way to deal with our world these days.
Richard asked Would you care to comment on, just the names of the members of your bassoon section and maybe a bit about where they're from?
Okay, well, right now we only have 3 people in our section. We had an audition scheduled for the assistant principal position, but it, like everybody else's audition, got canceled. So there's me, and there's Steve Wilson, who is the second bassoon acting assistant, who came in 1 year after me. Yes, and he is from. He's from Texas. His family's from Texas. I think maybe he was born. I don't know. I know he was studied with Kristen for a short time in UT.
He's Texan.
He's Texan.
He was in Abilene, then Tulsa, then Norfolk before he joined.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know he went to Abilene Christian College, and I think his dad still.
Yeah, we played together a few times in Abilene years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So and then Lou Lipnick he's the contra player. He's been here since, gosh, I don't even 70s.
But is he from Texas?
No, I don't know where Lou is from.
Your former second was from Texas, and the young lady you had mentioned earlier, I can't remember her name. She taught in Maryland.
Who, Linda?
Linda.
Well, she lives in Texas now. I guess she's from Texas too, probably. I think that's why she moved to Texas, was to be near her mom or something like that. Yeah. Okay. I guess. Yeah. Well, I guess. And then our principal oboe from Austin, Nick, I'm pretty sure he's, at least his family currently, I believe, lives in Austin. I don't particularly have any Texan roots. Although the second bassoon in Dallas is a former student. Does that count?
We can go ahead and wrap up here, everybody.